Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third Commune podcast on Metroid Prime Federation Force. My name is Daniel, and I am joined by the two other members of the Elite Federation Force crew. That is Greg. Greg, please say hello once again.
Hello.
And Adrian. Adrian, please say hello.
Hello.
So, as mentioned, this is the third podcast. In the previous two podcasts, we discussed Federation Force's game mechanics and dynamics, and how these things are unique to Federation Force and how they're sort of different from other first-person shooter games. In the previous podcast, we talked about how each mission has its own sort of style of gameplay, and we looked at the campaign overall, and we broke the overall campaign into different gameplay types. And so for this third podcast, we're going on to look at some of our favorite missions in the game and talk in depth about those. But before we get onto that, in the previous podcast, we were discussing how you've got in Federation Force, you've got these different types of gameplay. For example, some missions are your standard shooting missions. Some missions are missions where you have to take an object and move it to another point in the level. You've got other missions that are about defending a certain chunk of land, and you've got sort of sandboxy levels, survival levels, bait and trap levels, and we went through about 8 or so different types. And one of the questions that we had remaining was, what's the relationship between the levels that the player has access to at any one stage? Because you don't actually play the campaign in a linear order from mission 1 through to the final mission. You can actually choose several missions at once. And so we had this question that we didn't quite answer in the last podcast, which is, what's the relationship between the different types of missions and the spread of missions that you have available at one point in the game? And so we've put these on together, and we'll probably present this information somewhere on the side. But Adrian, what did we find? What do we find?
Well, when I broke it down and listed all of the missions and organized them by row and by type, we found that for every row, which usually is where you have an option to select between 3 different missions, or hell, even if you were doing them all in order, you would never do the same type of mission twice. It was always organized in such a way so that if in one mission you were doing a bait and trap, the next one would absolutely not be that. So if you do, say, a search and destroy mission for mission 8, the next one would become a deliver and defend, and also have a ball thrown in there, which we will be covering later. And then the mission after that is a survival mission. They make it so that even if you do them in order, and even if you do it out of order, you're going to have quite a bit of variety.
So there's variety in the sense that there are multiple types of gameplay, but even when the campaign is sectioned out into individual sets of missions, even within each set, there's variety there. And so it's these two things together that make the whole campaign constantly feel fresh.
Yeah. And so they structured the missions in such a way so that even when they give you an option to select any random mission, you're still going to be doing something new.
Greg, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, I guess it's just it's a good show of how varied the gameplay is. That not only are there a million different level types, but you can select from 3 at the same time, and you'll never have 2 levels of the same type back to back. That's just how varied gameplay can be.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was going to say that each row of missions, so when you divide them into the rows, the rows that come later, even though they're different from the missions that came before them, they still feel like they should come after them. That is, there's a sense of things getting harder as they go along. So just because mission 4 is a bait and trap mission, and mission 8 is a search and destroy mission. Mission 8 still feels like it should come after mission 4, even though you're doing different things. Of course, me bringing up mission 4, doing that on hard mode, it is actually one of the harder missions in the game. It took us the longest to complete, so there is some areas where the difficulty is strange.
Yeah, it does spike in one or two levels, but
I think that's natural from like how different the gameplay is, but also probably part of that is personal skills will apply more to one type than another, so it's going to be hard to cater the difficulty curve to all players.
Right. I guess a better way to say it is that that difficulty spike mostly happened because we were trying to get a gold rank on it. It's also how hard mode adjusts those enemies to where they do so much damage that they kill you in one hit, which naturally, even when you're doing mission 18, those air pirates aren't going to kill you in one hit. They'll do 50 damage off a missile, but it's not as severe as, say, an ice titan hitting you, which is what that mission is all about.
Yeah, I think we'll probably, possibly in the next podcast, talk a bit more about some of those, those gold medal or those 3 medal objectives and how meeting those objectives changes the nature of the mission. So, I guess our main takeaway here is that within the whole campaign, there is various different types of gameplay. Within the missions within each block of missions that the player has access to at each time, there is variety. And as you were saying, Greg, it can be difficult to sort of, because the missions are so diverse and therefore test different player skills and also the cooperation between different players, that's it can be hard to sort of perfectly optimize on the game in a way that it has that smooth curve. But overall, we would say that considering the variety of gameplay on offer, that it's a really pretty smooth game, and there are a few bumps within the campaign, and some of those bumps come from the intricacies of trying to get 3 medals, which is a whole other topic. So with that said, I think we might jump into our favorite levels. Now, obviously, there's a lot of variety, as we've said, in the campaign, and that would say that this is probably true for you guys as well. But it's pretty hard to choose a favorite level. Like, they're all pretty memorable, I found. Do you feel the same way, Adrian?
Yeah.
It stinks that when we have discussions like this, I'd like to have a representative set so that you can imagine the rest of the game. But to do that, we'd have to do every single mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We've chosen 3 levels, and we've chosen 3 levels that fit 3 different categories of gameplay. So we're going to be talking in detail about the 3 levels. So I would suggest that you play along at home, dear listener. So you are welcome to have a look at the videos that we've got there on the site, or you can treat this as a sort of video, as a sort of commentary that you can listen to as you play through the mission itself. Either way, having some access to the game as you listen will greatly enhance your understanding of our discussion. So give it a shot. And I guess before the podcast, we decided that we'd start off with a simple shooting level. And that level is the level that I picked. It's called Incursion, and it's mission 19. Just to provide a bit of context on this level, it is right near the end of the game, and it's the last standard shooting level in the game. I mean, there are 2 boss levels, but and there's obviously a lot of shooting in them. But this is the last arena-based shooting against regular enemies. So Incursion is set on the ice planet, so it does have that thematic context. And because it is the last mission within the campaign to be a standard shooting mission, well, it's the most difficult and it has the highest level of variation. And we're going to explore that one right now. So it's not in our notes, but there is an initial room or outside area that you start off in, just to orientate yourself. But 5 seconds into the game, you're through that first area and you're into the first room, which is an arena. It's a sort of, I don't know, like a hexagonal shaped arena. There is a layer. There is a sort of
A scaffold?
yeah, like a scaffolding area along the side. So pirates they can come in on the side, and then there's like this open central arena, and there's a few sort of ice pillars there which you can use the charge shot to break. But at this stage, these ice pillars they're optional. Adrian, did you want to take it away from here? We can go through the waves.
Yeah. So when you first enter the room, the first wave spawns about 10 or so eye flyers from the center of the room near the ceiling. Usually dealing with eye flyers is a matter of, locking on, and I find using the pellets or just doing the rapid fire, the weakest shot you have, is the most effective way of dealing with them because of how quick they move, to where trying to get them with the gyro aim as they're moving is still just really hard. So you want to get them in those periods where they zip across and then hold still for a few seconds. They're kind of like Chews and Zeldas, where they just where they kind of stop and pop.
So there you're sacrificing the explosion bonus, right? For when you charge shot someone?
Yes.
Well, with that tactic you are, but I mean, in saying that, it's still possible to charge shot your eye flyers and get your max point on them. But it's pretty high risk, but you do get a reasonable reward too. So
yeah, it's a difference between 5 points and 100 points because one pellet will waste them. They're one of the lowest health enemies in the game.
I think it's also worth adding that it's easier to do the pellet option if you're going for the 3 medals because the time cap on this level. So
the par time.
Yeah, the par time. That is quite tight, and so you really want to be moving. You want to be both moving through the rooms really quickly, but at the same time getting a really high score, which is the main challenge on this level.
So another reason why I usually opt for getting rid of the eye flyers as quick as I can is because pirates will spawn in. They have a staggered spawn time, so the eye flyers come first, and then the pirates come afterwards. They're not triggered when the eye flyers are dead. They have theirs is based on time. So you leave the eye flyers around too long, you're going to have to deal with both them and the pirates shooting at you. So pirates will spawn in on all sides of the room.
Up on the scaffold, that is.
Yeah, up on the scaffold, which means that they have the higher ground, which means it's harder to shoot them. So oftentimes what you'll need to do in order to get them when they move backwards is you'll need to jump and then fire a shot to hit them. So you also got to make sure you don't hit the rail.
Aren't there 2 types of pirates in this one? Like the regular pirates and the troopers? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I was about to get to. While the pirates are out there trying to flank you, there's the troopers that are jumping down, coming over to slash you. So at its worst, you're dealing with 3 different types of enemies layered together. The eye flyers that are high up in the air that you have to aim upward and also kind of lose vision of the troopers. So make use of that mini-map if you can. You have the pirates who are off to the side trying to flank you. Remember, they come because the scaffolding goes around the entire room. Trying to shoot at them from one side of the room leaves you open to the ones on the other side of the room, which team dynamics at play. You usually want to split up your efforts to deal with the pirates so that they don't flank you where you're not looking. Because the thing with those pirates is if they're too far away, they will move closer to you so that they can shoot you easier. And then, of course, you got to deal with the troopers who are good at hitting you when you're trying to deal with the pirates.
Mm.
Just a general note about the enemy types. The pirates are ranged, whereas the troopers are close range because they have the sword arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of similar to those enemies in Halo, but yeah, that's a really important distinction to make. And as we were talking about in the first podcast, I think near the end of the first podcast, we were saying how the gyro can become really helpful for when you're close, or well, at least it feels really great as well. You know, when you're really close to an enemy and you're sort of moving past them, you're charging your shot, and then you gyro just to the side, and so you can sort of run past them and side blast them as well. And so, because troopers, they jump in, they kind of look around briefly, and then they move on towards you. So there's lots of opportunities in this arena um, to sort of charge, move, and adjust with the gyro, and if you can do that, then that'll mean that you can avoid some of the flank from the space pirates upstairs, while at the same time keeping the troopers off your back.
Another way to avoid some of that flank is to just keep your back to the wall because it simplifies. You won't be in an arena surrounded where someone could jump in behind you. You don't even have to bother looking at the map because when your back's to the wall, nobody's going to come in behind you.
Right.
I think at one point we did a back to back sort of thing in the center of that arena.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and you've also got the the icicle pillars as well to act as cover. But again, you're surrounded by pirates.
Right. The troopers, because they're the close range enemy, they also, I would say, demand more attention because the fact that they run up to you and slash you is also where the dynamic of charging, causing your movement speed to slow, becomes more important because if you're loading up a charge shot and they start running after you, you can't outrun them, even if you're backing away from them. Also, you can jump over that little thrust they do, but the timing is really tight. There still have been occasions where I tried jumping over them, but they still managed to chip at my feet anyways. It's also another way to where sometimes you might want to let go of a charge shot early just to deal with them, and so you can potentially put them in hit stun.
Something that I want to comment on, and I don't think that we quite got to this in our pre-discussion and in the notes that we took, but there are waves, right? So waves in action games are pretty common. Like you have a wave of enemies, and you beat those enemies, and then on the next wave come in, and we're trying to figure out how tight together the waves are, and it would seem that they're quite well. So there's two waves. So there's the iFlyers and there's the pirates, and it would seem that I think by the time you've got rid of at least 8 out of the 10 or so iFlyers, that that the next phase would then start. So there's not really a lot of overlap, and if I remember correctly, it's sort of for this overall arena, it's one wave of iFlyers, one wave of pirates, one wave of iFlyers, one wave of pirates. So it does repeat.
Yeah, no, actually, I think it's the wave is iFlyers and then pirates spawn in a little bit afterwards. That's what I was kind of getting at earlier when I say that the spawning of the pirates is staggered after when the iFlyers spawn in. I can test this right now to verify to see if it really is get rid of most of them and then the pirates come in, or if it's actually timing based. I'm gonna find out right now.
At least from my recollection, I think the second time that the iFlyers spawn in, for that second instance, the iFlyers and the pirates are kind of close together. So it does, in the second instance, it does sort of overlap, and you've got to deal with the pirates and the iFlyers a little bit together.
The way it felt in gameplay was that, like, it started out with the iFlyers, and then you dealt with those, and then you had pirates, and then the troopers came in, and then like all hell broke loose, and you had three types of enemies running around at the same time doing totally different things.
Yeah, it does overlap, but I think it's in these cases it's quite hard to measure the with the three of us playing. It's hard to measure the triggers.
Watching the Shadow Mario 3 playthroughs, he kills everything really fast with missiles, so he makes it look a lot cleaner than when we played.
Mm.
There's a lot less overlap with him.
Adrian, how are you going with?
No, I think you're. Well, it's hard to say because I. Oh no. Oh wait, there's actually another wave of eye flyers. Okay, it might be different because of the way the ship is in single player, but Yep. Oh, they're the pirates. Yeah, I've got like 7 eye flyers running around and pirates are coming out. So it's actually a. It could also just be a single player thing, or just because of the way we play. So first, you get like 5 eye flyers. If you destroy like 3 or 4 of them, another batch of eye flyers comes out, and that's where we kept seeing 10 in the video. But I think in multiplayer, like all 10 come out at once. So I do think they actually adjust things. And the thing is, I didn't bring any of the the drones with me, so I'm completely by myself. So I do think there are differences between playing single player with drones, might even vary on the number of drones, and multiplayer.
So they might hold back some of the eye flyers. You kill just as many, but they adjust it for your attention span. One player won't have the attention span of 3.
Right. So once I killed, I think
Not attention span. I don't know what the word I want there is.
Yeah.
Just breaking up the task, basically.
Yeah, so once I killed like 3 more eye flyers, there's still like 7 of them running around in the room, but then the pirates just spawned in anyway. So I do think it is actually based on the number of enemies that are killed. It just doesn't have to be all of them in the room. So it is layered. I was completely wrong. It's not timing based.
Okay, so what you're saying is that there's a significant likelihood that at some point, possibly later into this arena, where the enemies overlap and they come out sort of roughly at the same time.
Yeah.
Were there any other things that we needed to comment on for this section?
The pillars are a nice idea, but I think they're mostly. I don't really get them, honestly.
I think they're just there for foreshadowing at this stage. They don't actually function as they do in later on in the mission where you can actually shoot down icicles, but they're just there to remind you that if it looks breakable, it is breakable, so break it. That's what I would say.
Okay. I would also say that they're there for cover. You know how you have pirates flanking in the room. If you see them fire a shot at you, it's easy to hide behind the pillar.
So what you're saying is that you can use the pillars as cover as well, or the destructible cover.
Yep.
So following the first arena, we have a beautiful hallway, which every time we go past, I always stop and say, "Damn, this looks good." And there's an optional mod outside, but if you're going for 3 medals, then you should probably forget that mod. Yes. This is a simple example of how going for the 3 gold medals, in this case, trying to meet the time requirement changes the nature of how you approach on the missions, because in this case, it was simply too costly for one of us to go outside and grab that mod, so we just had to change our tactics. And so certain options become less viable depending on the time that you have to complete the mission. And then we move on to the next room, and it's we're going to see a pattern here, guys, where we've got pretty much every room is unique and different, and it stresses its own sort of spatial dynamics and its own strategies and tactics. Room two is a bit of a staircase, isn't it, Greg?
Yeah, it's got that ramp on it, and so you still have a kind of scaffolding feature where if you're in the lower area and pirates will shoot you, you can walk up to meet them, and then, if I recall correctly, there's like a second layer there where pirates can still shoot at you from above. So there's a lot more height variation in this one.
Mm. I think the difference between this and the first room is that in the first room, as players, you're limited to the bottom floor. But in room two, you can shift between the floors by moving up the stair, up the sort of two sets of ramps. And so, because of the way that the room is designed as a staircase, the challenge shifts dramatically based on where you're located in the room. But in saying that, it's worth noting that most of the enemies either spawn from the section between the two ramps or between the two parts of the staircase, or at the bottom floor. So actually, if you're on the upper area, then you're kind of a little bit separated from the action. Cool. Anyway, so what enemies spawn in?
So in that section, you get the. Is it just the troopers and the elites?
No, you get the bruisers.
Yes.
There's two bruisers as well.
Sorry, I mix up bruisers and elites. So it's just the troopers and the bruisers, right?
Yep. And just to clarify, bruisers are the giant hulking. I mean, they're not like they don't even look like space pirates, but they're these giant hulking menaces with a sort of green glow in a sort of bracelet formation around their neck, and then also a bit of green on the back and a bit of green elsewhere on them as well. I think under their feet.
You have to shoot very specific spots or else they won't die. Like regenerators.
And they also have like a radial ground pound effect, so they can be pretty tough.
Yeah. Just a note about the first room. Yeah, they all spawn in at once. So the second wave is unlike the first wave where, they're a little bit staggered. In the second wave, they just all come at once. The eye flyers, the pirates, and the troopers. Also, I can't understate how easy it is when you're trying to deal with one trooper for just another trooper to just slice you from behind where you may not have even seen him.
That's why the wall technique is really important.
Yeah. But even then, if you're busy shooting one trooper, that means you're not shooting the other trooper that's literally 2 feet next to him. So that he can just come in and slash you. They also can dodge. I keep forgetting that, but the troopers, they've got some moves. So where they cartwheel back away to dodge whatever you're firing at them. It's kind of funny. A note about the second room is that because of that ramp and the way it also has that drop off, you can use that to escape the troopers. It gives you an option to deal with them that you didn't have in the first room of just trying to tuck yourself away to behind at a wall.
What I noticed though, with when the bruisers would jump up and slam the ground with their fist, if they weren't to do that sort of a little bit above you, so let's say at the middle part of the in the section between the two ramps. So if they were in that section and you were on one of the ramps itself, or a little bit sort of on the lower ground, it would still hit you as well, which was quite an interesting observation in that there's an extra dimension to that attack that you may not expect, given that it is a ground pound, which appears, for all intents and purposes, to be a sort of a flat run. There's actually a height dimension to that.
Right. I think what happened, it's a little bit like the ice time where he slams the ground and it goes parallel with the ground, which means it also goes, which means if he's doing it near the top, it's actually going to go up the ramp, up the slope at a diagonal.
Yes. What do we want to say about the combination of enemies in this room? I mean, I found this room quite tough, actually, and of the three of us, I would die quite a bit in this room.
So what's going on here is you have these big, bulky enemies, two of them, I might add, at the same time, and they demand that you use the gyro aiming to shoot to specific parts of their bodies. But then you have these little dudes who are much faster, coming in just running straight at you to slice you up. And of course, there's several of them, so it's a room where you need to manage between the big, slow-moving enemy that usually tries to hit you up close and the smaller, faster ones that try to hit you up close.
And the nature of space in that room, it kind of clusters everyone up together in quite a confined space. And so if you've got three players and you've got three players, two bruisers, and let's say, three or four pirates, it gets pretty cramped.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of mobility options, and that becomes a pain when they do their ground pounds.
Well, my experience, Adrian will be fighting a bruiser downstairs, and so I'll go upstairs and I can hot shot him pretty easily.
Hmm. This is where team dynamics come into play.
Yeah, and I think that that height advantage that you talk of, Greg, is really the optimal strategy as well.
There's that. It's nice being higher because you can see him easier, but also because when he does his ground pound, I'm not going to be hit no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. But we didn't even, we didn't really execute on that strategy, and I think on the reason why is because so many enemies spawn at once on that middle area, and they kind of block your access to the higher ground.
I remember running away from fights and shooting at enemies from far away while you two were maybe a little closer.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Greg, is you used us as a decoy while you
Yeah.
snuck around the back.
Well, the Samus one doesn't live too long, so.
Yeah, yeah, actually, yeah. Using a decoy is another. Yeah, I was thinking of us as decoys, not the Samus decoy.
I'm trying to see another video so I can confirm if the shockwave of the elite bruisers actually. Oh, that's actually another thing I need to point out is that first they're regular bruisers, and then the second batch are actually elite bruisers, which do behave differently from the normal ones.
So that's how you can tell this is the last shooty mission.
Yeah, and the elite bruisers usually they're tougher, but they also attack more frequently. So whereas a bruiser would do one ground slam, the elite bruiser would do like 3 ground slams one after another. He really goes on a rampage. I'm trying to look for videos to see if I was right about what I said about the way their shockwaves go up the ramp, but everyone keeps using missiles and just taking them out real fast. It's kind of lame.
Yeah, missiles are the best way to take them out because they do splash damage, so you can shoot their front and hit their back.
Yeah, it's like they're all playing on baby mode.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I would do. I'd use missiles on those guys. Why not?
Good. Have a reputation.
Yeah. But when you're trying to go for score, oh no, it doesn't. Okay, he did that on the ramp. I was wrong. It's not like the ice high. It just the deal with that wave is that it's not that one like the ice high does. It's this big, like almost like a water wave kind of. So yeah, you want to watch out for that when you're on the ramp.
Mm.
Might actually end up jumping into it. Oh, another note about the bruisers. You can stun them if you shoot them right, but if you're doing pellets.
Oh, that's right. If you use the charge shot, they'll like stagger backwards a little and give you some space.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the levels change because I do see them firing off partial charge shots, and unlike other enemies, the bruiser actually does super armor through it. So I think it's a level 3 or a fully charged shot that will stagger or slightly stun the bruisers. They don't have that much stun though compared to other enemies because they're not actually being hurt. They're sort of just like pulling up their guard.
Mm. Let's move on. Let's go to the next room. I'm happy to say a little bit about this one. So it's pretty much a series of corridors. There's a few optional box rooms with supplies or just areas where you can get some supplies. So it's sort of like the intermission. And this particular room or series of corridors, it uses a sort of challenge that was used earlier on in the game, which is you've got a corridor and you walk down the corridor, and then there will be some turrets that spawn in. So the turrets spawn in, they can attack quickly. So you jump to the sides, the bullets go past, you dash attack back out, and then you can then unleash your charge shots on them. So it's worth pointing out here that that most of the corridors with the so most, if not all, I can't quite remember now, but most of the corridors they are set at 90 degrees or set at a T junction like shape, so that so that you do have an area that you can retreat to as you go around on the corner and the turrets pop up on you spontaneously.
And I do feel like the turret bullets move too fast for you to dodge in and out of them, that you have to use cover pretty much.
Yeah. So with the eye fly, like just for comparison, the eye flyers when they shoot their purple bullets, it was pretty easy for me to strafe out of the way. The ones with those turrets, though, it's almost kind of a way leading up to what you will do in the boss for mission 20 to 21, where you utilize that same technique of hop in, shoot, hop out of the way because of how fast they retaliate. There's more than one turret, so yeah, and they're quick to fire.
Yeah, they are quite quick on the mark, aren't they?
Yeah.
I also like the play on expectations there, where the first corridor you get is just a breather between fights, and then in the second corridor, you get a decent breather. You pick up some items and stuff, and then there's this completely normal looking hallway, and enemies pop out.
Yeah, it's a real old crap moment when you realize what they did.
Yes. Oh, and there's a missile key at the end. So you get right up to the door and you're like, oh, this needs a key. And then you look to the left and you see that there's an icicle attached to the ceiling. And if you, shoot the icicle, then the icicle will fall to the ground and you have access to the missile key. So this is just a simple way to enforce an interaction that will be used later for the boss battle, or which could be used for the boss battle, and which you would need to use to get the all three medals.
We definitely got stuck on that the first time, though. It took us like 5 minutes to figure out what to even do.
Yeah, that was a little goofy when that happened.
We're going to move on to room 3, or the third main room. This is my favorite room in the game, so I'm happy to take this one. I think this room is quite at least compared to the other rooms we've had so far, it's the most complex in terms of its organization, in terms of its spacing, and how the enemies work within that space. So I've called this room the concert hall, and it's kind of like when you're at a gig and you've got like the main stage, which is up high, and then you've got this little area down low where you stand and listen to the music.
Yeah, there's even a little catwalk jutting out into the room.
That's right, yeah. So you've got the stage and you've got the catwalk, and to the left and the right of the catwalk there is this sort of like bits to the side of raised parts of the stage to the left and right. So you've got this sort of catwalk in the middle, left and right alcoves, and then sort of a little bit out from those alcoves are some pillars as well. So it's quite a complicated room. Pirates, and it's mostly pirates in this arena. Pirates will spawn in on the concert stage, and they will sort of hide behind parts of the rail, which are a bit thicker, and act as cover spots, or like a wall they can hide behind. So they'll spawn in from the top, and they will spawn in, and then they'll run to their cover. So you do have like a little window of time in which you can shoot them as they're running on towards that cover. Now, of those enemies that spawn in, you've got your generic pirates and you've got your elites. As you work your way through this room, though, you'll get some elite flying pirates. And so to start off, the challenge is quite straightforward in the sense that the pirates are on the stage and you're down and below, and so your focus is straight ahead. But then you've got this the flying pirates that kind of spawn in, and they will. I don't know where they spawn in from, but they like flying sort of at the back of the room, so in front of the stage, and what's probably likely to be behind the players, and so you've got to worry about that as well. You can use the pillars for cover, which is really helpful, but because you've sort of got these alcoves, and then you've got these pillars, and if you're at the back of the room where there's the most amount of space, then you can't really see as much, and you're further away, so you have to lead your shots more. It's a bit of a, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but you can't have visual on a significant amount of the room at once. You're sort of limited to one of the two alcoves.
Right, at first it feels like there's a lot of good cover to hide behind, and then as the fight progresses and enemies spawn in all over the place, it comes that there's a trade-off where you can find some safe spaces, but also it will be harder to see where your enemies are.
Yeah.
Not that you need to see them because you have a map, but it'll be harder to get a line of sight to shoot them, is what I mean.
Yeah, especially when they have cover that they can hide behind and run behind. One property of the elite pirates is that they can actually run while shooting at the same time.
And all enemies use cover, right?
Yeah, the
pirates, yeah.
Yeah, the pirates strafe around. The elite pirates in general seem to be a lot smarter and more intentionally using the cover. I think both types drop down. From the video, all I see is elite pirates are the ones that jump down and try to flank you up close. Because they are also the ones that throw grenades at you. You can't forget that.
Yeah.
This room is also where using that strategy of tucking yourself by a wall is the least effective because, as we pointed out, the further back you are in the room, the less you have to really deal with them when they're behind cover and on those balconies.
This is one where Daniel would throw down a shield so that we could pick a good spot close up to the stage. Nice to see the performer from there. And then we would just absorb so many hits using the shield and deal with the wave that way.
Yeah, I mean, you really have a lot of limitations in this room. You've got all of the enemies are above you. They all have the height advantage. They have a clear cover advantage, and the space that you have as a player to move in, you've got limited vision because of the nature of the alcoves and of the I think as well that that the two pillars are positioned so that if you're hiding, like if you're using them for cover, then you really can't get a good visual on the space pirates as you're playing. Like it really obscures your vision, and really what you want to be doing is attacking on the pirates when they're either moving on towards cover or when they're in cover, but you're in a position where you can attack an exposed part of their body, which is slightly out of cover. And so the actual window of opportunity to attack is much more limited as well. And I think it's those three factors together that make this quite a challenging room, and which is why, as you say, I would put down the old shield. So you've got so you can't see as much. You've got a height. The enemies have a height advantage, and you've got, I can't remember the other bit, but yeah. But the point remains.
They have a height advantage and a cover advantage. I also find that this is a room that definitely tests you more if you're willing to do jumping shots.
Absolutely.
Because of the fact they're on higher ground, and also because of that cover. The closer you are, the easier it is for you to hit the parts of them that are exposed, because it's not perfect cover. It's like a upside down trapezoid kind of. So the closer you are, the easier it is to poke at the parts that is exposed. The other deal is with the flying pirates. There's actually regular flying pirates and the elite flying pirates. Them being high up in the air, meaning you have to focus your attention upward, which means taking the enemies that could potentially be right next to you, or even the guys on the balcony out of view. And of course, they fire homing missiles, which that's when you really need to move around the room, and tucking yourself in a corner isn't really going to do you much of any good unless you're that good at shooting out the the missiles. But even then, that just leaves you a sitting duck for the guys on the balcony to just peck away at you.
And I think that there's so many enemies in a level that putting that shield down means that, in our case, it'd be myself and Greg, and Adrian would kind of like go Rambo or something. I wasn't really paying attention at the time, but I put a shield down, and it was like the absorption bonus afterwards was awesome. So there's also that factor as well. But you really have to, in my experience, you have to put the shield sort of at the edge, at the entrance of the alcove, so that it's I guess in front of the pillar, so that it's not obscuring your view, and you still have to kind of move around a little bit in that space as well, just to get those accurate shots for the limited opportunity that you have to attack. I think we've covered that one pretty thoroughly. It's my favorite room in the game, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah, it's really a complex room. But I think these add up onto one thing, and that it really forces you to engage with the core of the game, which is your gyro, which is your movement, we have the strong spatial dynamics, and all that good stuff that we talked about in the first podcast. And then we have the fourth room. Greg, would you like to take us through this one?
So you get some more corridors, and that leads you up to an outside room where it's kind of a smallish, circle-ish arena, and there's a couple of spaces where you can take cover and a couple of spaces where you can jump up on a ledge. But for the most part, you're just stuck in a plain old circle. It starts out with some ice hoppers, but then eventually bruisers come in, and also the Gripterixes, which are the roly-polies. So this room is pretty varied compared to what has come before, where I kind of feel like up to this point it's a pirate mission, and then this has the ice hoppers and the Gripterixes, which tend to have whenever you're fighting an enemy that's not a humanoid, they tend to have more simple AI, but that also makes them more varied because you're not playing a cover shooter all the time. So the ice hoppers will just hop around and shoot wimpy little grenades at you, and in a clear arc that you can see. Whereas the Gripterixes will hop up out of the ground and do a spin dash, they'll spin in place and rev, and then come at you. And it's a move that gives them quite a bit of invincibility. I think you might be able to shoot them in the side to get them out of it, but it's pretty hard to deal with anyway. And they also deal quite a bit when they bump into you.
So each enemy has a certain degree of power, within a game, and so what gives the Space Pirates power is that they have AI, and in that sense, they're quite, even though their behavior is pretty unpredictable, I guess it's quite dynamic compared to the other enemies in the game. And what the Gripterix, what the Gripterixes have is, they only have like one move, but that move, the roly-poly dash move, it's really powerful, it's really fast, and so that's how it. And so even though it doesn't have the AI, its power as an enemy comes from that attack. Comes from the speed and the damage of that attack, of its only attack. So it's somewhat more predictable, but that predictability is traded for its speed and power, for its speed and damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to mention, there's multiple of them, and there can still be ice hoppers jumping around, spinning acid balls at you. You do have platforms, but the thing with the Gripter axes is that not all of them, only the highest one will actually protect you from them because of the fact that they rebound up in the air when they collide with something. So you can actually still get hit when you're on the platforms there, trying to avoid the Gripter axes. So yeah, they're pretty dang dangerous.
Yeah, actually, that last point is a really important detail because it kind of Those platforms, I thought it was a bit deceitful actually, because those platforms look like they can actually like protect you, but they kind of can't.
Yeah, only the tallest one I think actually keeps you safe from them because they don't rebound high enough. The other ones are just low enough that they can still hit you on the way up.
Mm.
They also, because of how fast they move, they also stress that you use the side dash as they're moving forward. If it's too
Mm.
early, they'll just slightly adjust themselves so that they'll hit you anyways.
Yeah, they're very much like troopers in the sense that they're there to sort of interrupt your established behavior or what you're currently doing at that time.
Yeah,
And so you constantly have to switch your focus between the elite bruisers, who obviously are harder to kill, and your cryptorexes, which every now, like, which are off somewhere where you can't see them, and they're building up that charge, and they're about to attack you. So you've got to pay attention to that sound cue and do the
yeah,
two things at the same time. The hoppers, I think, are reasonably separated from the other enemies, although I think in the second phase of the of the confrontation, they kind of, I think they're a bit more close on together. But and they're pretty easy to get rid of, and they're pretty simple. But
mhm,
yeah, it's really those shifting your focus between those two enemy types that is the core part of this challenge.
yeah. Shifting your focus between various enemies, especially various different types of enemies. Well, maybe not through this mission. It's pretty much consistent throughout the entire way, but it increases throughout the missions in the game. One more point was it's just a more general point about how enemies and the ways they encourage you to use your mechanics in different ways, which is what makes fighting them all feel different.
Mm,
That I really do like.
yeah, I mean we've got a nice sort of rhythm so far, which play room, and then we've got the boss battle variation between these rooms. So we've got room one, which is like a open space, and really the main deal with space is that it's really open ended, and you can be and that the pirates have a high advantage, and yeah, pretty and there's a combination of the three enemy types: the eye flyers, the troopers, and the space pirates. In the second main room, we've got the elevation, and we have a lot of enemies in a confined space. So you go from a really open environment to a really confined environment where the nature of elevation in the room has where the players can actually engage in the height variation within the room. And it's really tight, and there's a lot of enemies. We have a series of corridors, which is sort of like a bit of an intermission. And it's a much more straightforward focus challenge because a corridor moves in like one direction. So the enemies are either in front or behind you. In this case, they're always in front of you. So this one's a bit more of a straightforward challenge. Then we have what we call room three, which is the concert hall, and you've got a height disadvantage, so you can't play around with height anymore. You've got obstacles and things in your way, and you've got enemies. And then we've got the fourth room, which returns to a sort of arena environment where it's more open, but you have, except for the elite bruisers, you've got enemies and enemy combinations that we haven't really seen so much in the levels so far. So there's a heap of variation between those few rooms.
Yeah.
And so we move on to the final or the second. Okay, so as I said, there's a supply room, which is obviously there so you can stock up on supplies so that you have some viable options for when you're dealing with the boss room, with the Ice Titan. Adrian, you'll take this one.
All right. So naturally, the main threat in this room is the Ice Titan. There's a bonus objective where you can drop spice on the Ice Titan, and you can use the cracks in the ground as a reference point to where to get the Ice Titan to stand. In a way, that sort of like manipulating his AI to stand somewhere where you want him to kind of goes back to the fourth mission in the beginning, which is containment. So, kind of a neat carryover from that mission.
And some of those skills are transferable, like using the slow beam, or using some players to lure the enemy over while others, prepare a sneak attack in the background.
Adrian would volunteer to stand in the way, and then one of us would have to shoot down the icicle.
Yeah. So that's another example where team dynamics come into play. Also, just because the fact that the Ice Titan can only focus his attention on one person at a time, oftentimes sometimes switching between players. Of course, that doesn't protect you from him doing his little grounds around him. So in the room, you also have 3 platforms on each side, getting progressively higher. Of course, they can still be attacked by the Ice Titan and other enemies.
They are like made of ice themselves, so they actually fit in with the fiction of that's been established at the start of the mission.
Yeah. So they're destructible, and while they do give you a height advantage, they'll only protect you for so long. The Cryptoraxes are definitely the main problem. And speaking of Cryptoraxes and Zerberats spawn in this. The Zerberats are especially troublesome because, as you may have mentioned in the last podcast, they are very fast to strafe sideways. And they can do that crazy jump attack where they latch onto your face, get a bit of damage on you. So the Zerberats, they're naturally are going to almost demand you to deal with them before you even deal back with the Ice Titan. If not, get really good at dodging them when they try to jump and bite at you. Same thing with the Cryptoraxes, where they can easily ram you while you're trying to deal with the Ice Titan.
Attacking the Ice Titan itself isn't hard, but yeah, the enemies that spawn in are pretty powerful enemies.
The Ice Titan is the first boss in the game.
Yeah, he is.
Oh,
The Ice Titan is also, big and slow, kind of like a bruiser.
yeah. So we have this sort of the variation between missions where it's you take one in open space, and so it's a really slow moving enemy, and that's the function of it. You've a slow moving enemy in the first mission, piece of cake. Then later on in containment, you've got to you can't kill them. You actually have to shoot at them, lure them over into cages, and then in this mission, it's sort of like a combination of both, isn't it? Where you have to, for the extra objective, you want to lure them over, and then you drop the icicle on them. So it's a bit of containment in there, but you also want to kill the enemy. So it's a bit of the first mission there. So they kind of combine those two, which is neat.
And it's not just for the bonus objective. The icicle also does a huge amount of damage. And it is interesting that the platforms are destructible. They make a really nice point from which to shoot the Griptrixes, because they're rolling around on the ground, and I don't want to deal with that. But the Ice Titan comes and knocks out your platform, and suddenly you're in a huge pit of guys rolling everywhere.
Another interesting note is that all the enemies here are enemies that have to damage you up close. So it's a good balance of, basically mostly melee enemies of different speeds. The fastest being, I guess you could say the fastest as far as normal movement would actually be the Zerberats. The Griptoraxes are fastest as far as attacking. Otherwise, they're more of a stop and pop enemies, whereas the Zerberats, they're always moving around, which is what makes them such a pain. And then, of course, the Ice Titan's the big slow one. But yeah, this would have been a shit show if there was actually a space pirates, shooting at you while you're trying to deal with the Ice Titan.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting how these 3 enemies but they show a significant variation in time and speed, time and space. Where the Ice Titan is big and lumbering, but he has a huge range of attack. And then you have the 2 smaller enemies with the smaller range of attack, but then their attacks are fast, but then they're fast at different paces.
Yeah.
Like you said, one was stop and pop, and one was more consistently running around. It's they layer a lot here, even with just the simple time and space.
Mm-hmm. And that also goes to a point I made earlier about the variation of enemies feeling different and how they encourage you to use your mechanics different ways. Zerbrats, their high strafe speed makes you want to naturally lead your shots in order to shoot them. Not so much with the gripped axes, but for them, it's a matter of timing and getting them when they're actually vulnerable and when they're done spin dashing. But you also got to be quick about it because they're quick to go back underground to where you can't hit them anymore, and then they spawn somewhere else. And then uh, the ice time is easy to hit. Of course, he also encourages you to use your uh, gyroscope, gyro aiming, to hit him on his weak points, the gems on his arms. Of course, he has super armor most of the time, meaning that he still will still keep attacking even when you're hitting him, whereas the other enemies will take hit stun.
So, the final room. Are we ready for it?
Yeah.
So the final room is the transfer device room, and these become a recurring room in the final few missions. Basically, you have again, you've got a sort of arena room. It's sort of shaped in a circle. There's a central shaft, and on that shaft there are some yellow just targets, nubs that you have to shoot. And once you've destroyed all of them, then you've finished the mission. So what's interesting, about this particular challenge, just in and of itself, is that you have to use the gyro, which is helpful.
You lock onto the pillar itself and use the gyro to adjust towards the targets.
That's it. That's the one. You've also got a couple of space pirates, some elites that are kind of just standing around.
Yeah.
It's quite funny actually because when you walk into the room, like they're kind of like walking around, doing their patrol positions, and then like whoa, like catch them off guard, which is really funny.
Yeah.
But there's only a couple of them, I think maybe two or three, so it's not too bad in that sense. You also have to use a charge shot on the transfer device as well to break those to break the yellow nubs. And there's also a ring that moves around the central pillar, which adds a timing element to it as well.
It'll obscure the nubs.
Yeah, it's a pretty slow moving one. Yeah, and so what happens in later missions is that you'll have a ring, and you'll have more protrusions that'll cover up the nub itself. So you'll have the ring moving, you also have the nub moving, you'll have these protrusions, and so in later missions, the transfer device room is quite there's quite limited windows of opportunity for which you can destroy the nubs, and there are more enemies as well, so it gets pretty tough. But this one's pretty simple.
Yeah, there's actually elite troopers in this room, so basically think of the elite space pirates with these sick purple flamberges, and they also do that cool jump attack, but they're also more dangerous.
It's kind of exasperating to kill the boss and get through that hectic room, and then there's more enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a last gasp, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess another element of team dynamics at play here is having to. Usually, you two would go after the transfer device, and I would try to defend you both as best I can from the elite troopers.
Yeah, because you only have you can only focus on so many things just as a matter of your attention span, but also your view.
Yeah, because you're looking up, which means unless they're like right in front of your face, you often won't see them even just running up in front of you.
Yeah, that lock on the central pillar, just like it obscures your vision of everything else around you, really, because it's sort of raised a bit, so your viewpoint is raised, and you're looking over the heads of your enemies.
Hmm.
You're also focused on timing your shot.
Right.
Mm.
I guess it's also a good point to note. Daniel, you brought this up earlier, but that's also it's using the sound cues because this game is actually really good with audio. So for things
Oh
like
yeah.
grip directions not blindsiding you, um, it helps a lot to actually like pay attention to the sounds in this game so that you don't get blindsided. The space parts, they naturally they screech a lot, so pay attention to that, and you can deal with the troopers.
Mm.
You can deal with them without even having to look at them.
And that brings us to the end of this first level of our discussion, which is Incursion, Mission 19. Any final thoughts?
Yes, this is a cool mission. I actually did manage to beat this mission by myself, and I get all 3 gold medals for it.
Why would you do that, Adrian? We're a team. We all
Oh,
promised each other we wouldn't play solo.
it was afterwards, and it was just because I wanted to see because we were still asking like what's the difference between playing by ourselves and multiplayer. So I just had to know, and so I tried it on this mission, and it actually is still perfectly doable in multiplayer. It's not one of those missions like Blender, which we'll come to later, that we thought is one of the more co-op stressed ones.
Listeners, this will be Adrian's last podcast with us. The Federation Force now consists of him. No, no, no. I actually, I originally suggested, several times, like, yeah, I like best single player. I actually, even though I was the one saying that a lot, I actually never, never really played much in single player. So, um, yeah. But talking about it now, I'd really like to do that. So,
Yeah,
um,
this mission, even though the objective is pretty straightforward, just get to point B. There's a lot of variation in enemies and how they use the level design, and also has a good sense of pacing.
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.